Hello and welcome to That Brooklyn Film Show. I am Jabari.
And I am Sabonjale.
And today we will give a brief introduction about ourselves. Okay, so a little about myself is that I'm 26 years old. I graduated school in 2018 and I went to Brooklyn College Film School. Growing up, I've always had a love of film because we've seen pretty much a lot of different kinds of movies that many people our age weren't exposed to and probably shouldn't be exposed to growing up. I've always loved just movies of every genre, from action films to romance to animated films. And I think part of the reason why I love it is that I've always been a artistic-minded person, and the fact that film is a all-encompassing medium that utilizes music, visuals, acting, and then the dozens of different roles behind the scenes from finance. It's one of the few mediums where literally every other art form is involved in it. I think the only one that might be able to top it is video games, because you add an interactive element that you don't have in film. But that's part of the reason that I love it. And yeah, what about you?
So I am Sabonjale. I am his younger sister, Jabari's younger sister. So I graduated from Howard University in 2017, and I have my degree in computer science, which is a ways off from film. But I've always had a great appreciation for film, just because growing up, I was exposed to so many different kinds of film, from the big blockbusters to the, rom-coms and the teen movies, to even smaller films that our mother would take us to at places like the Brooklyn Academy of Music. They have a theater there, so we would go see movies there. We would go to like the IFC. We would go to the movies in the park.
Yeah,
and
I still remember seeing Open Water to this day.
Oh God, I'm the one who said it was gonna be bad, and no one listened to me.
Yeah, that was a movie.
It wasn't good. But yeah, seeing things like Sin Nombre, or going to the movie in the park over at Brooklyn Bridge Park, where we saw. Remember seeing Invasion of the Body Snatchers from the
I don't think I was there that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
The I believe it's 1970 something version that they played, seeing like Wallace and Gromit and things like that. I think it was just so many different kinds of films we were exposed to growing up. And then as I got older and I went away to school, I think I cultivated that more on my own with my friends, and, just kind of just growing that love of movie even while I was gone. And although I wasn't focused on that in school, I knew that it was something that I enjoyed because, again, like as Jabari said, as an art form, it encompasses everything. You can go to the movies on days you want to cry because you want to see something sad, or you can go on days you want to laugh and see a comedy, or just something feel good that just, lifts your spirit. You can get educated from movies with certain documentaries, even certain dramas you can get educated from. So I feel like film really encompasses a lot of things, and that's part of the reason why I love it.
And I think that ties into why we started a podcast on it, because even when we were younger, we would discuss films, and more so than just like this movie was good, I like the story. We really appreciated multiple aspects of the films, and I think that's part of the reason why I decided to go to film school, is because I enjoyed the breakdowns that we used to have when we were younger, and that our parents forced it in us to look at things more than just like the whole, but the sum of the parts as well. Mm-hmm. And just that aspect of movies.
Yeah, and even I agree with that. And I think even like right before we started the podcast, we would do that. We would go to the movies, and then we would come back and for 30 minutes annoy everyone else in the house besides like our dad about
watch a ton of different review sites and everything.
Yeah,
like
talking
that.
About movies,
listen
and
to podcast,
what we thought this man, and our differing opinions, because we definitely do disagree on some movies. And even I have like one memory of going to I think it was the IFC in Manhattan, and we saw that movie with the band, about the band in I think it was a South American country. And then after
was
the movie,
I there?
Yeah, you were. After the movie played,
I vaguely remember
the
that.
The band
now.
came and played, and then we went like to dinner to talk about it and stuff like that. So I think a lot of our memories are tied to
going to the theater
and those kind of experiences.
I remember going with mommy to the theater one time to see this movie about this Chinese delivery man. And it was like a super independent movie. Probably cost like $20,000, $30,000.
Yeah.
But things like that, just random trips to the movies to see things that no one probably ever seen. I probably could never find that movie if I Googled it. But
yeah. And it was always like that. So while we did go to like Court Street to see the big movies, we would also go, like I said, to BAM or something of the like, somewhere that my mother found to see some movie that probably 2 people have heard of, but somehow she found it through a New York Times article or something like that. And those are things I think that really, for me personally, grew my love for movies and made me want to start a film podcast. And I like doing it with you because we do see a lot of movies together. And I don't know, it's cool to do with family.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, you don't get unfortunately, a lot of black. I mean, we have we have a black film renaissance going on right now with so many black filmmakers and stuff like that, but you don't see as many like people on the critic side that are of people of color, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of non-black people that are doing it. So I think it's good that we could give a different perspective based on our experiences and upbringings that you don't get to see very often.
Yeah, and I think also we're young as well.
Yeah.
So that's also a different perspective because I do feel like in the film market you do tend to skew a bit older.
Yeah, when we get into the favorite film parts, you'll definitely see that it probably differs from
what
a lot of other people like.
When we were doing that, and he told me that we're doing our favorite films, I was sitting trying to rack my brain. I'm like, is there a movie I could pick from like the 1960s? So I could sound real educated about movies because I feel like a lot of what we like or a lot of what resonates with us are probably newer movies just because that's, well, one, like something from even like the early 2000s will be older to us because we were young then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus something from like the 60s or the 70s is what you hear a lot of other film critics say because that's when they were growing up. That's like the Star Wars, their Lord of the Rings or something because that's what their first big epic was.
I mean, even when I was at film school, I realized that a lot of people in the school's favorite movie were newer films, like from the 2000s, because, like you said, that's what we saw growing up. That's what's going to influence us. People did appreciate the older movies. I have a lot of older movies that I love, but I still think that the movies that resonate with me most are the ones that are created during our formative years because of the fact that they're relevant to our times a lot of the time. Yeah, I love a lot of older movies. Like Gone with the Wind I've never seen it, but it might be a great film. But it's not. It's very okay.
Okay, no, I'm gonna disclaimer. Okay, so as he mentioned, we are black. For me, when I've heard of Gone with the Wind before I saw it, it was just how it's like this great, amazing epic. And then when I saw it, it just was very racist. And I do have opinions about them censoring it. I don't necessarily believe that should happen, but I do think like it is a product of its time. Yeah. And I personally didn't enjoy it just because I'm like, I feel like as a people, this isn't representative of us, but like Hattie McDaniel said, she could either play, a slave or a maid in the movie, or she could be one in real life. So that's kind of where that, those kind of roles came in. But I personally, I did not enjoy it. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I use Casablanca as an example, man. Is that it might be a great film, but the movie is just not as relevant to our time as a movie like Get Out might be. So it's easier to resonate with movies that are relevant to what's going on in society today and different techniques that's been developed over time and whatnot. Because things, as films are made, filmmakers learn from the films that were made in the past, so they continue to improve on things and get better at things. I mean, not say get better, but tackle it from a different angle.
Different perspective.
Yeah. So with that being said, I don't want to go right into the favorite film part. Let's talk about our favorite genre, since that is more all-encompassing than favorite films. So what are some of your favorite genres and why?
So some of my favorite genres are drama films, but there's like a specific kind of genre.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's such a broad... Every film could be considered a drama in some way. So what do you mean by drama? So
I personally like the new kind of dramas that we're seeing, like the A24-esque, very indie, very small kind of dramas where it's focused, on people and like their lives as opposed to, I guess like a big moment in history or something, you know what I mean? So like something like a Waves versus a King's Speech, where, I mean, King's Speech was focused on a person, but it's the King of England versus like, this is a slice of a person's life during this moment in time with Waves or something like The Florida Project. So I think for me, those are the kind of films that hit me more so than like the big, loud dramas. You know what I mean?
I was going to talk about that in my section as well, but it's something that the creator of The Last of Us said is that he enjoys simple stories with complex characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is that like it may not be like a Star Wars space opera with a ton going on, complex worlds and everything. It's like simple stories, like you said with Waves, like this football player's having mental illness issues. What's that going to lead to? Pretty much. But it's very complex characters that are being explored and dissected in these films.
The next one, which is I think it's a variation of a drama, but I think it can also be a comedy. It's the coming of age movie. Though that's like one of my favorite genres, and I think it's because it's a story that a lot of people can relate to, because you know you're young and then you go through something that kind of matures you. And I think those can be really interesting stories to tell. And with modern versions, so you think of something like Lady Bird. For me, I really like the Little Women that just came out, but I also think of the 1994 Little Women. Yeah, I think of like the 1994 Little Women, or if I'm thinking of, you know, a comedy, I might think of something that just came out a couple years ago, which is something like Blockers, or even in animation, you have Into the Spider-Verse, which is very much a coming of age movie, while it's also a superhero animation film.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like the true spirit of a coming of age movie, where it's just like this story of a person who is growing into themselves. They're becoming themselves. And while it's my favorite genre, one thing I do wish to see as we go forward and as we continue to progress is more coming of age films about characters of color. Because I feel like we have just as dynamic stories to tell.
And we have childhoods too.
You don't all, you know, just grow up. Or if they do exist, but a lot of them are struggle films.
Yeah,
and I want more than that.
I feel like Waves was a good example of, I mean, it was a struggle film.
It was a partial struggle film.
Yeah, but I mean, like initially it was just like, you know, these middle class black kids
and also,
who were coming up in the world.
With Waves, apparently the director didn't write it for a black family in particular, which I feel like is another important thing.
I think that's a good thing though.
Yeah.
Because it's not like black people, I mean, we do have our unique experiences because of the race and the complexity of race in the country, but at the end of the day, we're still just people. And when a lot of that is like not present, then you just have these people growing up and living their lives. Mm-hmm. And I think I didn't know that, but that's a good thing to know because it makes sense. Like I can see that now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Because you do have aspects of, I mean, it's not a review of Waves. We talk about it a lot.
Right.
But you do have aspects where race was included, like the father talking about to the son about, oh, you know, being a black man's hard. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's really not that present.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting.
I think that Waves also just happens to be encompassed of the first two genres I spoke of. So
I agree.
The next one is comedy films. I mean, who doesn't like a good comedy film?
Yeah.
You got Airplane, which is like, you know, one of the best.
So you mean more like a slapstick comedy?
Well, okay. It's more than that. I have like My Cousin Vinny up here for what I think of when I think of comedy. Superbad, which I always get mad about because it took me so long to see it, because my brothers went to see it with my dad, and then after they got back, I was told I couldn't see it, and that really upset me.
I mean, honestly, we shouldn't have been seeing that either. That was a grown movie.
I think that's why. It's because y'all shouldn't have seen it, but y'all already saw it, so you couldn't take it back.
Yeah, you can't.
But then I was blocked, so I just feel like it's because I was a little bit younger than you guys, and I'm like, that's not fair. But that's like another example for more recent comedies like 21 and 22 Jump Street, which were both like, I don't know, comedy is something you go to laugh.
Comedy is a broad topic because those two kind of comedies are very different. Like Airplane from 22 Jump Street. I don't know what even considered 22 Jump Street, the Superbads of the world. Like what
kind of comedy is that?
Yeah, those are kind of like, I mean, Superbad's kind of like a coming of age comedy if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, even like Girls Trip.
Stuff like that. But no, I get what
those
you're
are
saying.
like buddy comedies, I think.
Yeah, buddy comedies is a good word
and then
for it.
Airplane is like slapstick, and I feel like that evolved into like the scary movies and the date nights, and we don't got to talk about that too much.
Yeah, those aren't good, but the initial one was really good.
The next one is I have two more, and then that's. But the next one is feel good comedies, or not feel good comedies. Sorry, feel good movies, which I thought of that because I thought of Paddington 2, and how when I was watching Paddington 2, I was really just happy because everything about like sometimes you just want something nice. You don't want any real sadness, and like Paddington 2 hadn't touched upon it, but everything was just like finding the good in everyone and everything. And even, I don't want to spoil the movie, so I won't say, but even in certain things that happened in Paddington, he went there and he found the good in things. So I feel like those kind of movies are like what I look for. So Jabari, now like what are some of your favorite films or film genres?
Yeah, so I only did two. I just did my two very favorite, and you talked about it a lot. I wrote it down as slice of life dramas because
I think that's a better word.
I know in anime it's called a slice of life movie. It's like the movies that are, the anime shows that are just like coming of age stories. I'm trying to think of an example of one like Toradora, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Just like we talked about earlier, simple stories with complex characters. Because I've always been someone that prefers the character development aspect of storytelling more than the complex world. So I think that with slice of life, sometimes you get the best of both worlds. You get the complex characters, you get any genre basically you want. So it's a very broad topic because you can have a comedy slice of life, you could have a coming of age story slice of life, you could have a action slice of life. So it's very broad, but those are the movies that I tend to enjoy a lot. And second, I wrote that horror is my second favorite genre because I feel like the genre of horror, you're able to tap into psychological elements better than most other genres because I
think horror is pretty broad though. Do you have like a specific kind of horror?
I guess psychological horror. I don't want to say it's a new genre, but it's a genre that is being explored a lot more now than the what do you call them? The slasher movies.
Slasher, yeah.
Those kind of movies. So movies like Get Out and Midsummer.
Hereditary.
The one by the guy who did The Lobster. I don't know if you count it as a horror film.
Oh,
but
The Killing of the Sacred Deer.
Yeah, The Killing of Sacred Deer. Those A24 very much horror films are some of my favorites because I feel like they're all about being tense more than being scary. And I feel like that's very real to the world, is that we live in a world that's different now. It's not like back in the day where we have to be scared of a tiger. Because movies like Jason and Freddy, they tap into our innate fears of being like killed by things because that's what our ancestors feared. Like you go out to get a fruit from the woods, you might not come back because the bear might the bear might murk you. But today it's more so that society, like living up to society's expectations and living up to your friends' expectations, and all those stresses of the world are shown in those kind of movies. Like Get Out's a perfect example, is that it utilizes our fear of like systematic racism and not fitting in and stuff like that to tap into modern day innate fears. And I love movies that do that. Midsummer is another one too, is one that it taps into modern day fears. Like mental illness is a very big topic in horror films now because those are things that we're combating.
And I think you can see that through like the evolution of horror movies, because you had a time where you had a lot of movies like The Exorcist and The Omen, and a lot of satanic horror movies. Then you get to the slasher genre, then you get to the hauntings, and now we're at a place where it's more psychological than anything. Yeah,
because back in the it's a whole topic we get into, like the evolution of the horror movie, but just the genre in general is one of my favorites because I like psychological, specifically how it tackles issues that many other movies are unable to. With that being said, let's get into our list of favorite movies. Now, for mine, I don't really have a list per se. I just have a bunch of movies that I like a lot. I don't really I know my favorite movie of all time, but I don't have like this is my first favorite movie, this is my second favorite movie, this is my third favorite. It like cycles so much that I really didn't write it down as like a ranking.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
I have a rotating list of movies that just stay, in the zeitgeist of myself, that I really like. But you could, start your.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my 4 or 5 favorite movies, and I'm going to start with my all-time favorite movie, which is Mad Max Fury Road. And the reason that is like my all-time favorite film, no close second, is because I feel that Mad Max Fury Road is the perfect movie. Now, it's not like the best story or the best acting or anything, but I feel like it takes every aspect of what like makes a good movie, from like action to set design to costume design to editing to music to camera work, cinematography, and I feel like it does all of that so well that it makes it, in my opinion, the perfect movie. Like if Alien came to Earth and it was like, what is this movie? Like, what is this thing y'all call movies? I feel like that's the movie you should show them because of how much it encompasses of the whole genre. And that's why I think at the Oscars it won literally almost all of that behind the scenes stuff, is because of how well it utilizes the technical aspects of filmmaking. And as someone, who went to film school, a lot of that stuff doesn't get a lot of credit. Like, no one goes to the movies like, oh, I can't wait to see who designed this costume. And I think that those people put in a lot of work and they deserve a lot of credit. So I feel like when they do a superb job, it should be recognized. And I feel like Mad Max took all of the stuff that a lot of people don't think about and put it all together so well that it lifted the whole movie up. And I feel like that deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, Mad Max to me is a very good movie. It's definitely up there for me. I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie of all time, but I do see where all of your sentiments come from. For me, I went about a little bit of a different approach with saving some of my favorite movies, which they're not really ranked. They're just movies that are like near and dear to me, the movies that I really love, and that kind of some of them form my opinions on movies. So the first one that I have is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I know it's not one movie.
I'm about to say that's cheating.
I'm cheating here a little bit. I'm counting it as one long epic, okay? And I feel like it's to me the perfect adventure movie, the perfect fantasy movie. You have, this big story, you have these huge sets, and to me everything about it aged so well over time. And the reason I say I'll say like one big movie as opposed to something, say like a Harry Potter series or a Star Wars or something like that, is even the fact that they filmed it all at once. They didn't
really take breaks or anything like
take a
that.
break.
It was just shot as like it was one movie.
One long movie and then split up into pieces. So at the conclusion, which is why I think Return of the King won the Best Picture, it feels like a true conclusion to this series. And like I said, the story works so well. You have so many different aspects going on. You have like a hero's journey and multiple different characters. You have the villains and when I think of Lord of the Rings, I really like it.
It's an immersive world that's very big.
Yeah,
and I feel
you
like
for helping me out here.
It's very similar. It's similar in a way to Mad Max. And when you ask a lot of people their favorite movies, they tend to go for the bigger epics like Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, like you said. And I think that's, like I said with Mad Max, is because those are like movies. Mm-hmm. They take every aspect of what makes something like you can't make those movies in any other genre.
No.
Because they have $1 million sound budgets and then $1 million production budgets. They have $1 million costume budgets, and then they take all of those aspects and then put them together
to
create this unique genre that we call movies.
And for me, so Lord of the Rings, like I said, I think of movies as things that I grew up on. And Lord of the Rings is one of the movies that I grew up on. To this day, I'll have like marathons of it, maybe twice a year or something. And I don't know why, growing up, our parents introduced us to a lot of movies, in a lot of different trilogies like Star Wars and, you know, Indiana Jones, and none of those ever resonated with me the same way as Lord of the Rings. And to this day, I think that it's a movie that aged so well because of a lot of things like the use of practical effects. And, you know, you don't have these huge, big CGI set pieces. I mean, there is CGI used in a movie, but it feels like it truly feels like a world that's lived in, and it just works so well. And they make you care about almost every character that you encounter. So, you know, when you're meeting Gandalf the White, you're truly excited that he's coming back into the picture. Or when Sam and Frodo have a rift, it's like, oh no, why is this happening? You can see that the ring is taking control in the way that it's taking its toll on him, and that's causing a rift in their friendship, and he's able to be manipulated because of this weight that he's carrying, and you feel that throughout the movie. And I think that's why it works so well. And like I said, it spans across all three movies. And when I think of ranking Lord of the Rings, I have such a hard time because I feel like all of them have their strengths in their own ways, and it's like a cumulative thing that together makes it so great. It's like they didn't flop once in any of the movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. So the second movie I have on my list is Mean Girls. And I'm just realizing that every movie that I have is like, I have them as my favorite for like a very different reason. It's not like there's a theme of like, this is my favorite, this is my favorite. And the reason that I selected Mean Girls is because it's a movie that I could literally watch over and over again, and I never get bored of it. Like, I've seen that movie probably dozens of times at this point, and it's never gets boring. Like, the jokes always land, the characters are always fun to watch and be around, and you feel like you're in that world for the short moment that you're watching it. And it's like you were saying earlier, it's just a feel-good movie, and I feel like that is part of the reason that I put it on my list, because it's like, it's one of those movies that no matter when you watch it or what kind of mood you're in, it puts you in a good mood. And then it's just a good movie in general. Like, the writing is good, it has memorable characters, it has iconic one-liners, and I feel like those aspects are very important to what makes a good movie as well.
I think that with Mean Girls, it's one of those movies that is slowly becoming a classic as more time goes on, because like you said, it's iconic. It has the one-liners, it has all of the things that are so memorable from it that, you know, still get quoted to this day. And I think it's one of a few movies from that time, because I feel like the early 2000s, you had a lot of those kind of movies coming out, but somehow Mean Girls was able to stay relevant even till now. And it's just a really funny movie.
What's your favorite Mean Girl quote?
The Gretchen Wieners one, where she was like, "We could totally just stab Caesar." That part. I don't remember the whole quote, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. So what's the next movie on your list?
The next movie on my list, in the spirit of staying in the feel-good realm, I had a hard time for this one because I knew that I wanted to pick a Studio Ghibli movie, because I feel like a lot of his works, not all of them, because like I know you have something coming up that's a little bit of a doozy, but most of his films to me are feel good, even if they have those ups and their downs. And for me, it was a battle between Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. And I think ultimately I'm landing on Spirited Away.
Yeah.
And I think that just watching, that's one of the movies that you can put on at any time and you can just watch it. And watching Chihiro's story of, it's also like it's a coming of age movie of a girl who's moving away, who she's lost, and she's lost in a world that she doesn't know, and she has to learn how to navigate it. But you also have these visuals, like that's I think my favorite part about Studio Ghibli movies is just the visuals, the big tears, the food that looks so real, you know, she gets scared and you can literally see everything on her stand. Yeah,
if there was ever a time we did like best visually impressive movies of all time, I think that Spirited Away deserves a place on there because everything about that movie is beautiful, from the shots to the colors, and like you said, the food looks good. Everything about that movie is just like, it's a visually pleasing movie, which I think plays into a very big part of the reason why it's such a feel good movie as well. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, it's just a movie that you always, like, it's a scary situation that she's in.
Yeah,
but it never feels
feel
like scary. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, this is a bit odd, but it's also like, it taps into that sense of wonder that we also have as well, where it's like you're exploring this new world that's very unique and interesting to the Japanese culture, and I like that about it a lot too.
And like throughout the movie, there is like a sense of fear, or because she is alone in this world that she doesn't know, but along the way she meets people who are deliberately trying to help her, which I think makes it a bit better, because she's not just this girl alone. Even though she's new to these people, they go out of their way to try and make it so that she's not stuck. And then you see the goodness in her with certain actions that she does. And I think that's what ultimately makes it a feel-good movie, because while there are aspects of it that are like genuinely scary, it never feels that way because of the wonder and the goodness in a lot of the characters that you have within the film.
Yeah, almost everything ends in a good note. Like even the monster that was like just devouring everything ended up becoming a spirit. I forget what kind of spirit he was.
He was a river spirit, I believe.
River spirit, yeah. Mm-hmm. So everything kind of ends in a very good way, and that's a lot. You get a lot of that in Ghibli films. Mm-hmm. But on my next film, you don't get that, which is Grave of the Fireflies. And pretty much for every reason that you said, not every reason, but a lot of the reasons why you said you like Spirited Away, is that it's just a beautifully animated film. Japanese filmmakers have this technique which they call the pillow shot, which is a cutaway to ordinary things to establish the world and put you in the world. And Ghibli utilizes these shots a lot, and that's one of my favorite aspects of Grave of the Fireflies, is because it puts you in the shoes of quote-unquote the enemy during World War II, because most films about World War II is like you get one massive battle of one side, which is the good guys, which is us, the Allies, versus the other side, which is the Axis power.
I believe so.
And I think that what Grave of the Fireflies does so well is that it shows you that at times of war, there's really no good guys versus bad guys. It's just all bad for the people in the middle of it, which is the civilians. And in Grave of the Fireflies, you had this fairly, like, I guess, middle-ish class family whose life was turned upside down because of the war. And in their mind, the Japanese soldiers were the good guys, and they were like root for them, and their father was a soldier. They kept waiting for him to come back, even though, spoiler alert, it came out in 1990, it came out in 1980 something, actually. It's crazy that the father was dead, but they kept talking about him as if he was alive and he was going to come back and save them. And then the emotional, like, the slow buildup of trauma in this movie is probably, in my opinion, the best that it's ever been done in a movie, because it's like one of the first movies I ever cried in because of how subtle it was. Like, similar to Moonlight, like, it was a very subtle technique that they use in order for you to be put in the shoes of the character. Because, spoiler alert for the end of the movie, 1, 2, 3, when the younger sister dies in the movie, it's not really like thrown at your face where it's like, oh my god, she's dead. It's a very subtle, they do it in a kind of a in a way that once they show you that the sister has died, something that I've never seen in any other movie is that they show her in flashbacks of when she's at her happiest. And that, in that moment, it shows you that the impact of the war, like, is completely negative, because you're seeing her, like, this girl was starving, she had no family, but she's still just being a kid, like chasing butterflies, chasing frogs, swimming in the pond. This is all while her brother is gone, stealing for her, trying to find food. And it shows you that these people are just kids who are caught in a situation that's out of their control. And I feel like, at least in any movie I've seen, I've never seen a movie that conveys what it's trying to do as well as that movie does.
Yeah, I actually never seen Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh wow.
So I got spoiled there too, but it's okay.
So that's a movie that you gotta watch now.
I know.
Because it's a superb film.
You've told me about it before. I've just never gotten around to it. But amongst your discussion of this, you did mention my next pick, which is Moonlight. And to me, Moonlight is just a superb piece of filmmaking. Like, I've never been to a movie before, so I don't cry easily in movies, but I have cried in movies. But I've never been to a movie before where after the credits rolled, I started crying because of the emotional hit that I just took watching that film.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that.
And not only is it emotional, it's a gorgeous film to look at. Like, we're speaking of like how films are getting more diverse now. I know that like black films exist, but I don't know if I can remember one that framed blackness just so beautifully. Like the way the lights would hit Little, and just the way that these people are viewed, it was just gorgeous. Like a gorgeous piece of film in general, on top of the acting and just going through this boy's life. And then one of the things is just like, you have a movie where a character is played by 3 different actors throughout the course of his life, yet somehow each actor manages to embody him so perfectly. You know, like I never felt like I was looking at a different character, although these actors don't necessarily favor each other so much.
But the way they act is so close and similar, the mannerisms, that it feels like it's all like one character.
And
yeah, I agree.
Just like his internal struggle from when he was a kid, asking why he was called the F word by someone and if that's what he is. And Mahershala Ali's character, who is supposed to be like this, you know, drug dealer, is comforting him and being like, you choose who you are. Don't let anybody tell you that. And Janelle Monáe as well. And
it's very, it's kind of a role that is contradictory to what you see in real life, because with the role that Mahershala Ali was playing, tends to be like, he was like a drug dealer. I'm guessing he was very macho, and you would assume that he would not be supportive of Little's homosexuality. And I think that by making him an ally was unique in that it just isn't something that she would have assumed would be the case. And I kind of like that, because it may not be the reality for a lot of people in that situation, but it creates an image of what a black man in that culture can do to be supportive of other black people who aren't exactly the same as you sexually, but are the same as you culturally.
Yeah, and then going throughout the rest of the movie, one thing that stood out to me is the score. The score in the soundtrack. That's like I don't listen to a lot of movie soundtracks, but that's one of them that I will, you know, go back and listen to because it's just so beautiful. And he's the same person, I believe, who did the score for If Beale Street Could Talk as well.
Yeah.
And that's another one that's superb.
Yeah.
And then just like the way they framed things, because I'm thinking of when, in his last iteration, I think that's when he's called Black, he goes to visit Kevin, and the way that they frame his face, and then the way they frame Kevin in the back cooking, and then the music playing, which is like Hello Stranger, I believe, by Barbara Lewis. And it just, everything is encompassed so perfectly in that shot and in the shots throughout the movie. And it builds to such a great movie. Even like when he goes to see his mother again, and that scene where she's like yelling at him. It's just, I don't know. It's a beautiful movie, and it's definitely up there for me. Like, obviously this is my favorite movie list, so it's up there for me, but it's so good.
Well, it's next on my list too, so I'll get into some of the reasons why I like it. It's like you said, it's just an all-encompassing film. I'll go back to my analogy of like what you would show to an alien if they came down to Earth and asked, what is this thing y'all call movies? And I feel like Moonlight is Mad Max is like production wise, it uses every aspect of production in order to create this film that is like a movie to me. But what Moonlight does is that it takes like every aspect of film and perfects it. So like the writing is so good, the cinematography is perfect, the music is perfect, and it does that, in my opinion, to create one of the few perfect films that have ever been created. In that there's not really any critique I have of the movie. Like I can't think of any negative aspects of that film because it was so good. Like all the actors were good, their lines deliveries were good, the writing was superb. And another thing what great writing does is that it utilizes silence in a way to build tension and make the movie even better. And Moonlight is a film that it doesn't have like a ton of dialogue, but it utilizes like cinematography to help tell a story. And there's one thing that you said about it being one of the best films that photographs black people. I think the only movie that might be better is Mother of George. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. Mm-hmm. That was shot by someone who actually went to Howard named Bradford Young.
Who's like Arrival.
He did Arrival as well. And I think he did Selma as well. He's like, to me, the best at photographing black skin. But the cinematographer for Moonlight, it was just a gorgeous film, and how all aspects of the movie was just perfect in my opinion.
So speaking of screenplays and like useful silences in film, my next film is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And to me, that's another film where it's so much about the emotion and it's about humanity. And although it has sci-fi aspects, it doesn't feel like a sci-fi kind of film. It feels like a human film, you know? And essentially the premise is, what if you could erase someone who you once dated, who you were once in love with? What if you could just erase them from your life and never know them? And we watch as Joel, played by Jim Carrey, goes through this process of erasing Clementine, played by Kate Winslet.
You said Joel and Clementine. I'm thinking of Joel from The Last of Us.
And Clementine
from The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Like that combo actually fits because they're both in like apocalyptic world. It just crossed my mind. It'd be funny if Clementine was like the Ellie and Joel had erased her, but that was just something that crossed my mind. You can continue.
Yeah. So I think that this movie is so effective because I think part of it shows, one, that memories are integral to who you are. And as much as something might hurt at the time, you might not really truly want to erase what you think you want to erase, you know? Because that's how, one, I like the way the movie explores time because you're jumping back and forth and you don't know, when are you in Joel's head? When are you in the real world? What's going on now versus then? And just when you're in Joel's head and seeing him as he gets further and further into this process of erasing Clementine, realizing that I truly don't want to erase Clementine, but I've already started this process, so what can I do? But try and hide, try and stop it, but knowing that you can't really stop it. And then I'm going to, spoiler alert again, 1, 2, 3, just knowing at the end that they decide that, because, okay, so what happens is they meet again. And
Joel and Clementine
meet again after they both erase their memories, because Joel erases his memories as a kind of to get back at Clementine for erasing hers. So they meet again. They don't know each other this time. And after they spend this day together, they go back home and they have these tapes that another character has sent to them from their sessions about why they want to erase and where to erase it and all of those things. And it ends with them deciding that they're going to try again. And it's so...
They're going to try to date again?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because it's like, essentially you know that this is headed for failure because you've done this before. You've tried this before and it didn't work and you know it's not going to work out. Literally, you've erased each other from their memories. But the human part of them is so like, let's try. And I think that's what makes it so much more interesting than just like a general, I guess, sci-fi movie or general romance movie is because it's saying, all that we know, all these emotions that we've had, to the point that we literally said, I'm going to take you out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
We're still going to go back and give this another chance. And that, to me, that's what made the movie feel so human and feel so, good. And I think that one of the aspects that makes you seeing them wanting to try again, even as you see it getting bad, in Joel's memory, is the fact that although it was getting bad, he's still working so hard to keep it as opposed to letting it go.
Your description, I never seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but based on that description, it kind of reminded me of, when you said they're going to try to get together again, even though they know it's going to fail, is in Watchmen TV show, when Dr. Manhattan was like, we're going to date for 10 years, but at the end, we're going to break up.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe just that like the moment that they are together and are happy is worth the heartbreak in the end. And it kind of sounds like that's what the theme of the movie is. Like, yeah, it hurts, the breakup hurts, and you may not want to experience it, but it's more so about the journey than the final destination.
Yeah.
And I got to see it still, but that's kind of what I'm getting from the theme of the movie based on your explanation.
Yeah, and another movie that I liked so much, it's not on my list, but just speaking of the whole concept of time and everything, is Arrival. And learning that everything you're seeing with her daughter, and knowing that, again, we're going to spoil this movie, spoiler alert, 1, 2, 3, knowing that her daughter is going to die in the future, but yet still choosing to have that child, is like the same concept. It's, do you sacrifice what the potential of something, because it's going to have a bad ending? Or do you still know that something's going to have a bad ending, but then take the time that you're given and enjoy that time while you have it?
Yeah, no, I definitely get it. I mean, I didn't like Arrival as much is because the reason that you did like it, when you talk about the, well, you said it's similar. I mean, we're not doing a review of the Arrival, but
yeah,
complex stories just bugged me, and that movie was complex to me.
Really?
When you just said that her daughter was going to die in the future, went over my head while watching. I just did not get the whole, time jumping and whatnot. It just confused me.
It was because it's essentially that time became circular because of the language. I get it, but to me, that's what it reminded me of.
Because they talk a language, so they see.
Yeah. But that's what it reminded me of when I was watching it, because I realized, oh, wait, all of this stuff that she's seeing as the future. So when, in the end, she chooses to get with Jeremy Renner's character, she's choosing to go down this path that she will lead to a daughter and then a death and then all of those things, but she chose it anyways because knowing you don't want to stop your future just because it's going to end poorly, because then you're just blocking.
I'm all for trying new things, but that movie just ain't resonate with me. But so the last movie I have on my list, I have 2 films, and I'm gonna pick one, but I'm gonna just tell you why I have 2 films on my list. Is one, I have Alien, which to me is I just love the movie Alien, and I don't know if you've ever seen it. You ever seen the original Alien?
No.
Okay, yeah, that's just a great film. It's well shot. It what I love about the movie is that very similar to what you said with Waves, the original role for Ripley was initially written to be a male lead, and they just cast Sigourney Weaver in a role, and it worked out perfectly. Now, the character of Ripley kind of became a cliche of the tough woman character over time. But back when the movie was released, it was very bold because women, unfortunately, at the time were not allowed to be seen as tough and to ever be seen in a masculine light. So I like how they took the risk of putting her in that role and how she just took it and made it her own thing. And also the shots were well done. The artistic direction of the Alien is iconic in general. But the second movie I have is Eraserhead, and it's for a much different reason. It's because I hated the movie Eraserhead when I first seen it. But sometimes I realize about film is not whether about you like it or not, but how it resonates with you. Mm-hmm. And after I seen Eraserhead, that movie literally sat with me for a month. And I could not figure out why. So I kept looking up movies of I kept looking up reviews of Eraserhead, and people were like, I hated this movie so much, I hated this movie so much. And then I realized that the movie was made in a way for you to feel uncomfortable constantly. And I hated it is because I felt tense watching the movie consistently. because what they do in the movies, they have this technique where they have a sound of a factory constantly be playing in the background, so you always feel uneasy, and it constantly stimulates your senses.
Sounds very Lynchian.
It's a David Lynch movie. It's very Lynchian. So your senses are constantly being stimulated, but in a way to make you feel uncomfortable. And once I read about that, I'm like, wow, that's insane that these films are able to manipulate you and control how you're feeling in that way based on just using the techniques of filmmaking. And I think that made it one of my favorite films, is because while I didn't like the film, the techniques that is used to me are something that you could take and be like, okay, so with filmmaking, you can control what the viewer feels by doing things to mess with them psychologically. And I think that in general is a really, really unique thing to do. I know those are two movies you didn't see, so
yeah, it's kind of hard for me to comment. So for my last pick, I just have a bunch of films, and I'm gonna go with just a random one because I have so many movies I think that resonate with me, and I just think of more and more, films as it goes on. And my final one is The Departed. And for me, I thoroughly enjoyed The Departed just based off of pure, I don't know, I don't normally like action-packed movies or action movies, but I feel like not only was it an action movie, it was a good drama as well. And then seeing how these two men, their lives are so intertwined and they don't even know it. And I think that's an interesting concept, where this one kid is a cop, but he comes across as a criminal, so they enmesh him in that criminal world. And the other one, he's a criminal, but he looks clean cut, so he is enmeshed in the cop world. And then they know the same woman, and they're working with all the same people, and they're always kind of just like a split second apart from each other.
Two sides of the same coin. Yeah.
And I think it's a really good movie, and I do want to see the original Korean version of it. That I know it.
What's the name of the original Korean version?
Eternal Affairs. And I think that just the way Martin Scorsese directed The Departed, he did such a good job with it. And then this is one of the movies where you don't really have, you have a version of a happy ending, but you get frustrated because you know that the character that you think deserves a happy ending, he doesn't get it. Like, he really doesn't get it. But to me, it's one of those movies that you can really just watch, like if you're in the mood for something fun but also serious, you can turn that on and enjoy it. And it has a rewatchability factor that some other movies I don't think has. Do you have anything to add
about The Departed?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't remember it too much. I do remember that it's just being a really good movie. I always remember the scene where he was texting in his pocket, and that was so impressive at the time. Now I think about it, it's really not that hard.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was really impressed by that.
Oh man, what is this guy doing? Texting in his pocket.
That was like a cool trick.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by that.
I just really liked it. It was almost like a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah, it's very light, Yagami, Lelouch.
Yeah, but a two-way street, because they're both the cat and the mouse at the same time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
I think that aspect of the movie. And then on top of it, just the acting. I think sometimes the acting, not sometimes, a lot of the times, a lot of other things go into it, but I think a lot of times the acting can really elevate a movie. And I think that's one of the movies where the acting...
Yeah, acting definitely elevated it.
Really elevated it. The direction as well, but the acting really elevated it, because Jack Nicholson was good, and Leonardo DiCaprio was good, and Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon. They were all really good in that movie. Even
all these
with
Bostonians were just killing it out there.
So... Now for our quick fire round, what's up first for you?
So, for the rapid fire round, I wanted to do... Let's just list our next 5 favorite movies in one sentence each why it's our favorite. So I'll go, then you go, I'll go, then you go.
Okay.
So for the first one, I'm going to do Perfect Blue, and I'm going to say that it was psychologically thrilling and beautiful to look at.
For me, the next one is, or the first one is When Harry Met Sally, because it's a perfect rom-com.
Okay, next on my list, I have Parasite, and because it is a great study of classism in the world.
My next one will also be Parasite, because it encompasses comedy, horror, and it is a study of, again, classism in the world.
Next I have on my list is The End of Evangelion, and that is because it is a psychologically stressing film that studies the worst of humans.
And next on my list is I Am Not Your Negro, because it is a documentary in its greatest form where it's not traditional and it focuses strongly on the works of James, or solely on the works of James Baldwin, in a fully unique way.
I don't know if that was one sentence or not, but
we gonna count it.
You had some commas and periods in there. All right, for my next one, you're going to see a theme is Apocalypse Now, and because it is a psychologically stressing film that shows the worst of humanity. I think we need to get a therapist.
The next one for me is The Devil Wears Prada, because it is the first film that made me love Meryl Streep.
My next film I have Goodfellas is because it is a it is it's a unique film that puts you in the shoes of a life you may not be used to but are intrigued by the end of the film.
For me, the next one is a 2-for-1. It is The Imitation of Life 1954 version and To Kill a Mockingbird, because it showcases race relations at that time and the different ways that race can play a factor in your life.
Okay. And for my last film, I'm going to pick Django, because it is an action-packed adventure that is endearing and unique take on the time period it's in.
And for my last one, I am picking Get Out, because it is a horror movie that is horrific, not only because of the things that's done, but because of the reality, I guess, of it and how horrible it is.
Okay. I'm surprised I didn't mention Get Out at all. And my favorite, because Get Out is like, it's literally in my top 5 favorite movies of all time, but it just slipped my mind. But
you mentioned Get Out earlier too, I think.
I think I did.
In horrors, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely did. But you know, the list is always changing and evolving depending on your mood and whatnot. So those are just some of our favorite movies, why we like them, some of our favorite genres, to get to know more about us and why we're doing this. And in conclusion, I just want to ask, what do you want out of the podcast going forward?
I mean, I just want to continue, I guess, the way we have been, where we have frank discussions about films. And I think with this podcast, what we've done that's different for me is that we pick something that is interesting to us and then we kind of delve deeper into it. And I've never watched film, I guess, in that particular way. Obviously I pick films that are interesting to me, but thinking about it from like a topical perspective makes the watch different. And going forward, I just want to continue on with that and then just continue to grow as a podcast. And, you know, maybe one day we'll have guests or be able to speak to people about their favorite movies and what resonates with them, because I think it's interesting to get other voices as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've had to do some like watching film from a quote unquote critical perspective for like film class essays and whatnot. But I think that we've been talking about films that we've watched and we approach it with a very creative eye in general, that we break it down when we watch it. But going forward, I would like to improve my own personal eye on filmmaking, but also, if I'm able to, open up people to films that they may not usually watch, and also watch them in a way that may not be typical to the average moviegoer, and join the conversation with us after they see the movies that we may have either exposed them to or they may have already seen but want to get a different perspective from their own on that film. So I would like to continue to discuss films and see where we're at, because we're continuing to evolve with the podcast. Podcasting is a skill in its own, and I feel that as each episode we do, we're continuing to get better. So I would like to continue to improve there as well.
I agree with that. I think that as each episode goes on, we learn a little bit more, and we can be just like a little bit more critical than maybe we were even in the last podcast.
I fully agree.
So on that note, thank you for listening to this podcast. If you do like this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you're listening. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.